Right, episode 4 of chatting shit about the Nightfall Cup. Still got it right every time so far, so that's good. Joined tonight by 3 players who I'm really pleased to be joined by because they're all fairly new to Silph. Also joined within either the last couple of months before the end of season 2 or the start of this season. So that's James, who's Holmesy. He's actually the 3rd James who plays PvP in Sheffield now. That's going to be fun. Jord, who I've had on before, and Lewis, vegan wargamer. How are we all?
Good, man.
Yeah, well, very good.
Grand. Let's jump straight into it. James is going to start off with something that I have a very love-hate relationship with at the minute. Why don't you tell us about Golbat?
Well, it gets such a good rep on here. I thought that, I'd make my debut by bringing it up again.
Well, why not?
And we'll throw it out there straight away just to make Dan happy. It's Pokédex number 42, just to make it look like I have watched this before. And yeah, there's a lot to like about Golbat. I'm looking down at my little cheat sheet here that I wrote, but it does everything that I needed it to when I started to create a team, because my team was very weak to Medicham, very weak to Venusaur. And Golbat sort of covers both those two, and I think both those two are very common. And with its win percentages, so in the Eden Shields, the one shield you're looking at 66%, and 2 shields 68%, which isn't that great because you've got a lot of big losses against ice types and ground types. But if you can give it a couple of wing attacks before you switch, so if you can use it as your safe switch, a couple of wing attacks in, it does boost it quite a lot. And actually you can flip things like the Abomasnow and the 2 shield if you get a couple of wing attacks in first. So I do like it there. Obviously there's one massive elephant in the room when it comes to Golbat as a safe switch, and that is Stunfisk. But I don't know whether it's worth the risk or whether you just want to lose in battle there, but Stunfisk is a bit of a wall.
See, I was looking at that sim because Rose Cup, which was sort of early 2020, I used Golbat a lot despite the fact that Probopass was on every team, because as you say, it's got that nice coverage and it can pick up things like the fighters and the resistant charm as well. But Shadow Ball hurts a lot of things, and I think that if I remember this rightly, I think if you have a Shadow Golbat, it does about 45% to Stunfisk with Shadow Ball. So it's not. I mean, you're still going to lose, but it's not a game over sort of loss, is it?
Yeah, I did get locked in against one in a practice cup, and although you're right, I lost switch. It didn't come out with loads of energy, and I think if it had tried to come out with loads of energy, I might have got it into the red. So yeah, maybe wall was the wrong word, but I feel like with Stunfisk being on, I want to say 99% of teams, and if they're not leading it, but if they're leading it, you wouldn't switch in your Golbat anyway. So if you're switching your Golbat, there's a high probability it's in the back. So it is a bit of a risk using it as your safe switch. So I was actually quite open to using it as a league, which I did quite a lot in practice. Worked all right. I think the lead could be its position. PvP will tell you different, but I think the lead could be its position just because of the Stunfisk threat.
Yeah, and it's the same with, I guess as well to a certain extent, Lapras as well, which will probably be another one of the bigger counters, because these sort of things are also Frostlass counters. So I think that's why people tend to keep them in the back. A bit of psychology there. Yeah, I think it makes quite a good lead, to be honest.
I like it as a lead. I've been using it in practice tonight mostly as a lead, and it wins a lot of matchups because people don't really think it's going to be led, and then it's just deadly. It's just so much damage with a wing attack, and then if you can farm something down and then someone brings in a G-Fist, you've got a Shadow Ball, it's nice chip damage.
And especially when something like G-Fisk, like it feels here, the things that counter G-Fisk are just to counter G-Fisk for the most part. And so having things like Shadow Ball that can spread throughout your team, that can do like 35% here, 20% here, so that sort of thing. Sometimes that's going to be how you're going to be forced into a situation where that's how you're going to beat G-Fisk, and that's why Noctowl sort of typically is it's always seen as like the bulky flyer that is the sort of premier one, but That's what, if I had to pick a sort of a proper flyer, I think I'd be going Golbat because just because it's got that hit. It's got that hit, and it's just never going to be walled. Anything that has Shadow Ball is just never walled.
You're definitely going to come out and take a shield if they want Stunfisk to have some health, and then you can take shield advantage into obviously a losing switch, which is still good.
Yeah. Obviously it's poison type. The thing I've been enjoying the most using this cup is Venusaur. With that being a sort of shared typing, have you been running it with a grass type, or has it been the solo poison, or what's?
I'm trying to think of my team now. No, I haven't been running a grass type. No, I don't have a frenzy plant greatly Venusaur, which never helps. But no, I've not been running a grass so far, subject to change.
Fair enough. Cool. Well, yeah. Remind me after this. I think I've got one spare, so might be able to send one your way. Yeah. What do you reckon? What do you reckon, Lewis? Golbat? Something you see using? No. Yes.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the Stunfisk lock-in is going to be pretty terrible for most stuff that obviously is flying. But it's like you said, it's a Shadow Ball. If they've farmed up energy and you want something to come out, because Shadow Ball hits everything, like you said. So you're either going to take a shield, or they're going to be low enough that you can come in, farm down with your fighter, or farm out with something else, and then you've got, say, like a Power Up Punch, or you've got a Rock Slide on a Machamp ready. So even if you've lost Switch, you've got energy on something that can farm down something. So I would generally take one. Just based on that it's losing matchups is still, if you can hit a Shadow Ball or take a shield, then it's still pretty good.
Yours was non-shadow, right, James?
Say that again, sorry.
Was it non-shadow or is it shadow?
Mine's non-shadow, but it's pretty high rank. I think it's a rank 4 from the Spotlight Hour.
Shiny as well, wasn't it? Not that that matters, but
Yeah, well, yeah.
yeah, he beat me bad with that yesterday. So.
Yeah, same. We've played twice now, and he's thrilled me both times.
Yeah, you like the Venusaur lead.
Brewer's game plan out the window.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, the reason is because I love Venusaur here, as I say, but it's so the Golbat is such a hard counter to Venusaur that I feel like if I'm facing a Golbat team and I want to use Venusaur, I have to lead it. Otherwise, that's the best chance I've got to not getting it trapped. And there isn't really much that does that here, certainly about Venusaur, because I faced a few Noctiles tonight, and Sludge Bombs do about 35-40% to the Noctiles, and they don't shield them.
Yeah.
So if you put a shield into your Venusaur, you can often farm down a bit, and you can maintain switch if you need it. But against Golbat, it's just,
poison typing is just ends Venusaur. It's just no need to shield. Throw a couple of Poison Fangs in there, and then farm down. Really.
Yeah. And I think Poison Fang is something. It's a shocking move, of course it is, but it's often what I've been finding in the Marsh Cup is that it's often just enough damage to kill something when you need to throw something to stop your opponent getting another charge move. And that's that's all you need, really. You need to do just enough damage to kill, don't you? No point.
It's also good if you want to leave some energy to farm down as well. Some health to farm down, sorry. Yeah,
very good point. There's a lot that's good with energy here. So, particularly Frostlass is the sort of classic example, isn't it? So, yeah, cool. Well, do you think we've missed everything? Anything? Do you think any other points on Golbat?
No, I think that's good.
Big fan. Like it
yeah, definitely.
Do you know what? It's growing on me as the month goes on. How much of that is down to the fact that I started winning in Marsh Cup again towards the end, I don't know. Or how much of it is down to the fact that James has been battering me with it
Well, that's why I took it. Because I got battered by James with it.
That's generally how I switch up my teams. Get absolutely trashed by a Pokemon, you're like, well, I'll just run it then.
Yeah.
You can't beat them, just take them.
Exactly.
Yeah, fair enough, innit? Fair enough. Okay, well, my pick is Gliscor or Gliscor. I don't know how it's pronounced one way or another, but I'll go Gliscor. I don't know what Pokedex number it is because I like making Dan angry. And it's sort of when I was looking at the flyers, and I sort of saw the G-Fisk issue, and I thought, hopefully there'd be a way around it. And Gliscor has that way around it because it's got Earthquake. Some people like the extra bulk from Gligar, but Gligar has Dig, and that's just like...
It's not a great ground room, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. And, the point in Gliscor is that you've got Earthquake to beat G-Fisk, and that's why you run a ground flyer. So I think there's no play for Gligar personally. But because of the ground typing, it's not great versus the grass types. So it's sort of really more of a G-Fisk counter that sort of does okay versus the grass types. I think with Wing Attack Night Slash, you're winning 0s versus Venusaur and 2s, and you're sort of marginally losing the 1s. But as Jord says, you can leave a bit of health on it. Get 3 Powder Snows with your Frostlass before the next thing comes in, or a couple of Mud Shots with your G-Fisk, or something like that. So it's sort of the opposite way around to most flyers, which is always an interesting sort of dynamic that the Pokemon have. And as we found with sort of G-Fisk, I think there's one of the things that makes G-Fisk so good is that it's got Earthquake to throw at everything that counters it. Like even if Medicham's the sort of standard G-Fisk counter here, it still has to take 50% from an Earthquake. There's no getting around that sort of thing. And so, yeah, Earthquake's primarily there for G-Fisk, but it's got the same applied applications as it has on G-Fisk itself, so it's going to hit everything hard. Double weak to the ice typing, which is a pain, obviously with Frostlass being what it is. But Night Slash is super effective, so if Frostlass is messing around, trying to overfarm you, trying to come out with too much energy, it's going to have to take some big damage or shield, and the potential for that boost as well. The Wing Attacks, Wing Attacks already do a decent amount of damage. But if you've got the 2-stage attack boost, you're really going to start putting through the Frostlass. And Frostlass is its biggest counter here. And if I've got a Pokemon where the worst thing I can possibly be against, I still have a 35 energy super effective move with a 30% chance of a double attack buff, I reckon that feels like a pretty safe swap.
If I was running Frostlass, I wouldn't want to switch into it. Because, keep a couple of Wing Attacks off, I'd be a bit like, no, I'm not switching to that.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, what are you switching into? Or Lapras? You don't want to switch Frostlass in, but you sort of have to.
It's the fact is that Night Slash does neutral damage to most things. So, and because they're so spammy, even like you said, Frostlass counter absolutely counters it. But do you want to come in after it's got a couple of Wing Attacks off? Because you're going to have to start adding up those avalanches, or you're going to take quite a few Night Slashes. And if you get that boost on the first Night Slash, then the counter's gone immediately.
Exactly.
How much damage does it do to the Frostlass?
Oh, I don't know. I should probably check these things. Let's have a look. Gliscor.
Am I also right in thinking that it's a flyer that's not weak to rock?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The fact is that usually all flyers will get rock slided to death, but being ground is obviously you're sacrificing that ice weakness, but you're picking up the spammy rock moves that usually would take out flyers immediately. Like obviously Golbat don't want to take the rock slides, but Gliscor can take rock slides for fun.
Yeah, so you beat, because you have the neutrality to rock, you beat Gliscor, you beat G-Fisk, in the zeros and ones straight Earthquake. If you have a 1-wing attack advantage, which I don't see how you're getting that, but unless people are switching Stunfisk into Gliscor, but that seems dangerous. If you have a 1-wing attack advantage, you can go straight Earthquake in the 2s. If you don't, you can still reach the Night Slash after they've shielded 2 Earthquakes. So the G-Fisk's coming out low-ish anyway after all those wing attacks. They're resisted, but even with wing attack, it takes a long time to get to 2 Earthquakes and a Night Slash. So just by the pure amount of wing attacks you're going for, it's going to add up. But interestingly, you also have the option of going for straight Night Slash and picking up the 2 shields versus G-Fisk, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, it is definitely a G-Fisk counter, despite its flying type. But yeah, because of the rock neutrality, that's where it is. I just checked. Night Slash does 43% to a Frostlass. Really nice chunk. So by the time you've got a couple of wing attacks in, 2 Night Slashes will kill.
If you want to win that matchup, if you do bring in a Frostlass, you have to shield. So you will lose shields even if you're countering, which is not a good counter.
No.
If you bring in something that needs shields to counter something, then is it really a counter?
Because the issue is, a Frostlass will still win the even shields, but the issue is that you get into the Night Slash first as the Gliscor user. So, if I'm the Gliscor user, and the Frostlass shields, I can then just let the Avalanche through and just say, right, I'll just take a shield damage. If they don't shield, I can say, right, okay, I'll shield now, and I'll take switch advantage. So there's as the counter in the Frostlass there, you're not getting that choice, which is an uncomfortable situation to be in. Yeah, so I really like Gliscor. It's very different to Golbat and indeed Noctowl in that it's not a proper grass counter. I mean, if you've got a good IV Gliscor, you beat Victory Bell in the zeros. Just with Wing Attack and Night Slash. You always beat it in the ones with Wing Attack and Night Slash. Victory Bell, it will just Leaf Blade through you if it shields twice. So it's not the same hard stop to Victory Bell that something like Gliscor or Noctowl is. But as I say, it's more of a G-Fisk counter that does okay versus things that the usual G-Fisk counters really struggle with. So
just an all-round pain for pretty much everything.
Anything that runs Night Slash is just a pain.
Yeah, and it's one of them where, because Night Slash is such a good bait move, in a neutral matchup versus Charmers. Charmers tend not to have neutral matchups, do they? But you can charge up to your Earthquake, and because you've got that good bait move, the temptation there is on the Charmer to not shield, thinking, yeah, but Gliscor bait's done it. So so you can perhaps sneak a couple of Earthquakes through. And I've been finding G-Fisk a bit frustrating because the Earthquakes, despite it being a big move, it doesn't kill very often. Like, it always just, because G-Fisk attack is quite low, it often falls a little bit short, whereas Gliscor has the higher attack, so it can just one-shot things. So there's a bit of power behind those Earthquakes.
So would you run Gliscor instead of G-Fisk or with G-Fisk? No,
that's an interesting one, because I don't necessarily see them as, despite them both being ground types, I don't necessarily see them as sort of having the same weaknesses, because one of them's there to beat counter users and one of them's losers to counter users. I think whatever counter users are more popular than Mud Boys, I'm quite comfortable running them together. If that changes, or if something like Lapras picks up in popularity, which will give G-Fisk a hard time, or something like Abomasnow and Shadow Abomasnow, if things like that pick up, I'd be more tempted to run just the one. And I think G-Fisk wins out like all day. I think, I don't. If it was a case of running one or the other, I would struggle to justify dropping G-Fisk for it. But there isn't much water damage here, So, and given that that's what that is the shared weakness, I'm kind of okay running them together, to be honest.
It's just running into those victory bells, the shadows and stuff. If you're running both of them on the same team, it's not necessarily nice to see it, obviously, as a switch in or at the back, to knowing that you've got Gliscor and Stunfisk on your team. But you can still come out of those matches. You can still beat the victory bell with those two, or obviously Venusaur and stuff. But
yeah,
it's never nice.
No, and that's Gliscor is much better versus victory bell, or certainly much more reliable because it's got the flying type fast move as well. So
it's got really good coverage on the whole. It can hang with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's not much actually. I mean, it's a fairly hard counter to Gallade. So it's not Tal, but it's a fairly hard counter to Gallade. It's not got the confusion weakness which Golbat has to worry about. So there's, I think there's lots of swings and roundabouts with all the flyers. I think Noctowl is possibly the best sort of generalist all-rounder. Golbat's got some amazing coverage because of its poison typing, and Gliscor's got the G-Fisk. I think they're all worth considering, to be honest. Absolutely. Yeah. Any final thoughts on any of the flyers, I guess, before we move on? I mean, we spoke about them all a bit.
I kind of feel I weren't into bringing a flyer at first, but now there's more grass running around than I thought there would be, and all the flyers have got like more than one type coverage, so there's I think there's more play for flyers than people think, and I won't be surprised, as the month goes on, just to see pretty much everyone running a flyer at some point. I think it's definitely worth having.
Yeah, having a
fighter.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm going to say. If people are running a fighter and a grass, taking something with a flying fast move is just perfect, especially with something that can pick up Night Slashes pretty quick. Even obviously it's not doing much damage against the fighters, but at least you can either get that boost or you can do that chip damage, and then the wing attacks will be ripping through.
Yeah. There's not much that's. In a weird sort of way, it has a similar role to Gallade in that it's beating the grass poisons and the fighters. And there's a lot about this cup actually that has situations like that where things that are just nothing alike in terms of typing, movesets, or whatever, they happen to pick up the same combinations of things. I think it's a really interesting cup like that, and I think because of that, it's very difficult to say X is the best flyer or Y is the best flyer. So
yeah,
it'll come down to team comp, won't it? If you want to put one of these as your kind of like center, it depends on what you put around it. So I think that, like you said, you can't pick one specific flyer or anything because it depends on the team around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, in that case, let's move on to Jordan's pick, which I'm very excited about because it's one of my favourite Pokemon.
Yeah, so I've gone with Pokedex number 62, and it's Poliwrath. I was after pretty much my big problem in the team was G-Fisk, and I'm not convinced by this one for this tournament, although it's so highly ranked on PvP. And I was just looking at the other mud users, and I stumbled across it, and I immediately fell in love with it. And I used it in practice tonight, and I can confirm it is awesome. So it beats 67% of the meta, which is not great, but give it one mud shot lead, it goes up to 75%, and give it 3 mud shot lead if someone's slow switching in, it goes up to 82%. So nothing, like there's a lot that don't want to switch into it straight away. It beats G-Fisk in all even shields, it beats Frostlass in 0s and 1s, it beats Lapras at shield disadvantage, and it beats Swampert in 1, so it beats a lot of the common stuff that you're going to see. It does well against most fighters. Obviously, it don't really want to see Medicham, but it beats Scrafty, Obstagoon, Primate. It can beat Machamp with a couple of Mudshot leads, and it can also threaten the grass with the Ice Punch. That's its obvious big weakness, but it can hit back and it gets Ice Punches pretty quickly. And then obviously you don't want to see the Charmers, but you know.
What fighting type does? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is it only scale?
Sorry, James.
I said, is it only running Psychic? Or is it just always scared of it?
Is it only scared of Medicham running Psychic, or is it always scared of Medicham?
It just can't hit Medicham hard at all.
Yeah.
I've tried both moves on one tonight. The Ice Punch does hardly anything, and the Dynamic Punch, it probably does about 30%, but it's not going to be able to hang with it for very long. You know, it's nice chip damage if someone switches in and you've got a Dynamic Punch ready to go, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's for anyone who played back in Sinister Cup, Poliwrath or Medicham was the big sort of choice between which fight you run then, and it was a similar situation where Medicham was the one people went for because it beat Poliwrath. Although back then, people were taking on Hydro Pumps onto the Poliwraths because AWAC was around there as well. I think here, as Joe mentioned, I think you need the Ice Punch for the grasses.
Yeah, it chips away at the Venusaur. It does about 40%. So, you know, if you've got a couple of Mudshot leads and a Venusaur wants to switch in, fair enough. You can take a couple of Ice Punches on it and, you know, farm for something else to come into.
Yeah. And it's sort of like all the fighting types generally struggle versus Venusaur and Victory Bell. And this is probably the Pokemon that's fastest to that coverage move because it's, you know, Mudshot and Ice Punch. So it's the one that's going to, I mean, with the possible exception of Blaziken, I guess, with Blaze Kick and Counter, that's going to be quick there as well. I know we had a quick chat about this before and Jord. Have you had a look at Bubble? Because
I had a quick look. I still prefer Mudshot, but I mean, it'd work in my team still because the main reason it's in there is for the G-Fisk. But just for is Bubble the same charge, energy generation?
No, Bubble is Bubble's like Fire Spin. I think it's 11 energy per 3 moves. It's a 3-turn.
Yeah.
Come on, use your words. It's a 3-turn move, and it gets 11 energy from that.
Yeah, I think that's why I Mudshot's just too good in it. The energy generation, it's just.
Yeah, I think if you take Bubble, you lose more to grass types.
Yeah.
That's your
100%. But I was just thinking it might shore up the Frostlass matchups and might make those a bit handier. But I mean, Frostlass is a difficult one because you go in for Dynamic Punch against it, which sort of seems counterintuitive, really. But it'll still do a decent chunk.
Yeah, it does chunk. I managed to land one on there today. Let me just double check how much it does.
Yeah,
so about 37%. So it's it's not too bad.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering that you're resisting the Powder Snows here.
Yeah.
And Frostlass is likely to be going into the Shadow Ball, so it's taking a little bit slower to get to its big hits. It's not classically a fighter. It's not sort of classically a mud boy, but here it doesn't matter that it's not one or the other. It's one of the.
I wouldn't run it as a sole fighter per se. I mean, I think you've got to have something else with it, but in certain situations, I've been using it in the back, and it really comes up clutch, especially because you've seen a lot of grass lead, so the main cow's out of the way, and then you can come in and just let it go to town on whatever's in the bag, give it a shield, and it hangs with a lot, and it's got a lot of positive matchups from the Pokemon you're going to see a lot of.
Yeah. James, Lewis, what do you guys think?
It's nice. I think it's nice.
I really like it.
I think it's nice a fighter not just being a mono fighter. So it's the same with Blaziken, having that secondary typing. You throw some matches, but you gain some matches that a fighter typically can't do. So obviously, Poliwrath, you're gonna be losing because of the grass, but at least you're resisting like the ice types, which then you can hit with, like you said, dynamic punch, and you pick up better fights. So I think that the fighters are very situational, but having a water fighter does obviously give you advantage if you then build your team around obviously that water weakness. I think you can pick up some really good teams.
Yeah, and you said, Jord, that you use it instead of Swampert. I really like it in this compared to Swampert because of the Ice Punch. Just gives you that little bit of coverage with the water, with the grass. It's not an easy switch in for Venusaur.
It's nice. I owe you, James, for it, because I was going to pick Golbat for this, and I had to find something else, and I was like, oh, Poliwrath.
Yeah, I mean, imagine
I'll take credit where I can.
I mean, imagine if Swampert got Ice Punch. You know, that's
Yeah.
You know,
Yes, it'd be number one in every cup.
yeah, it would. Yeah, I don't know whether you've looked at this, Jord, but I wonder if the shadow version. I wonder if the shadow version helps out with that extra power.
I don't have one, but
well, the reason I asked this is because I do. I powered one up for a sort of a friendly competition that we've done in the Yorkshire Belgians Discord before. So I've got it sitting there. I spent 160k Stardust on it. I powered it up for 2 best of 5s and then used it once. So I would quite like to find a reason to run it, to be honest, at some point. Let's have a look. So if I'm going to give it a 2 mudshot advantage over Venusaur.
Yeah.
No, still doesn't win, but the Ice Punches are doing 55% each. So it's going to hurt.
I think, like I said, I used it in practice tonight, and people struggled with it because they don't really know what to do with it. And you know, those 2-3 mudshot lead where people work out what they want to switch into it can make such a massive difference.
And again, go on.
Sorry. I was going to say, fighting against Poliwrath in Great League and Ultra, just in normal GBL, it's always so hard to work out what charge move they're throwing. I always find it hard with a Poliwrath because you feel like they're going to bait, so you don't want to shield. But like I said, if you don't shield a dynamic punch on most stuff, that hurts a lot. And then they can just throw ice punches after that, and you have to shield at least an ice punch.
Mm.
Yeah, even resisting a dynamic punch hurts a lot.
Yeah. And you don't get any debuffs, obviously, like close combat. You're losing, obviously, that. But with a dynamic punch, it's just straight damage every time. So I think, running dynamic punch in it is really good.
Yeah, I think what I particularly like about the Ice Punch sort of being there is that similar to what we were saying about Frostlass and Gliscor, actually, in that you're forcing the Venusaur to make that decision first. As to whether it wants to shield or not. So you can, if it lets the first one through, you can choose to shield and hope they let another one through, or you can choose to just let it go straight away. And because it's coming so quickly, the Venusaur isn't going to be able to massively overfarm, which is so important because unless your opponent's got a Golbat or a Noctowl, there's nothing really that wants to take a move from a Venusaur that's it's going to take less than sort of 50%. Even G-Fisk's taking sort of upwards of 40% from Frenzy Plant. It's such a busted move. So even in the losing matchups, being able to stop the opponent from sort of taking the piss and running away with energy is sort of important, I think, especially particularly in this cup where energy advantage, 1 or 2 extra turns of sort of fast move energy can flip things.
I was having a tough time with this cup, and then tonight it's just flipped. Like, I think everyone's got that one Pokemon that flips a tournament for them, and this is the one for me. I don't think you'll see much of it. Well, maybe, but because I think everyone tends to try and go to switch straight to Swampert, don't they? Say Mudboy, Swampert, Whiscash, and then I know it's not like a true Mudboy, but it works well. It does work well.
I think being able to use Mudshot as well, but not be a ground type, works so well because obviously the Swampert Mirror, the Hydrocans are doing a lot, but because obviously this is just a water type. It's not taking as much, which is quite nice. And I think that's a good thing to have a Mudshot user that's not ground type.
Yeah, I mean, it's not particularly bulky, but it can take a hit as well. Even an Earthquake does about 75%. So, but by that point, you can easily get to 2 dynamic punches against like a G-Fisk, and you're not forced to use your shield.
Yeah, I mean it's on the bulkier end of the spectrum, especially in this cup. It's bulkier than. I think it's got similar bulk to Medicham.
Yeah, I mean it's bulkier than the typical like mono type fighters, isn't it? But
yeah.
When I've come up against it, I've always been shocked at how little.
Oh, we lost you there, James. You've been shocked at how little what does?
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
So when I've gone up against Poliwrath, I've always been absolutely shocked by how little my move has done.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, you think of fighting types and you think the flimsy, don't you? So, it's an interesting mix of.
It's definitely one of the bulkiest fighters out there.
Yeah.
For Great League.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a nice mixture of bulk and speed and power, isn't it? It's sort of.
Yeah, the dynamic punch hurts.
Yeah. Like I often find with the zoom rule, obviously it's really good, but I often find that it's just a bit too slow, and it's never quite bulky enough to lift the next charge move. So I often find the zoom rule very frustrating to use. But when I've used Poliwrath in the past, I've always found it to be just fast enough, or like just bulky enough, and I think that's always a nice. I mean, it's all like anecdotal, but it feels like a nice trait to have. Cool. Yeah. And any other points on Poliwrath you think are worth mentioning? Anyone?
I just think, it has got that bulk that you don't have to rely on shields, even on frenzy plants. Like, it'll take a lot, but at least you can then get off, like you said, a couple of ice punches, so they have to shield. So if you don't take shield advantage, or you don't take switch advantage, you can flip it the other way by taking shields or taking advantage. And it's quite nice, and its Mudshot's always going to be nice on any Pokemon. Getting to those charge moves really quick. And having a fighting charge move and an ice type charge move is nice coverage on most things.
Yeah, anything that can beat G-Fisk in this meta is worth considering, I think. Everyone's going to be running it, aren't they?
Yeah,
definitely.
A lot of people will, for sure. Okay, well, let's move on to onto your pick, Lewis. I'm a bit pessimistic about this, but I'm open to being open to having my mind changed.
Yeah, so when you like lie on your CV to get a job, and then you get the job, and then you have to pretend like you knew what you were doing. So that's Tentacruel. Now, it's not good. It's not great. It's winning about 53% of matchups, which is low when you're looking at metas and you're looking at kind of counters. But I started with looking at what can beat Medicham and what's not just the usual in the meta, because it's sometimes not fun to just go, right, the top 5 in PvP, let's pick a team of 3 there, let's go with it. Poison Chav's nice, obviously it got a buff recently.
Poison Sting got a buff.
Oh, Poison, no, well, there we go, that's another thing for it. But it's okay. It doesn't take most things in the meta on 0 shields. It does need the shields with it, but having Acid Spray as a bait move is quite nice, because even if you don't take a shield, which most people won't shield on a Tentacruel, just because the fact is that Hydro Pump is going to take ages to get to. But Acid Spray is quite nice. Even if you are locked in a matchup, you do a couple of Acid Sprays, lower them, and if they're locked in, the next Pokemon, can run kind of wild. And Hydro Pump obviously is hitting a few things there, if Poison isn't. So obviously your Poison's going to be hitting your grasses and weakening them. You've got obviously then the Hydro Pump, and if it lands, it's doing a fair chunk against most. In the 2s, it's close to picking up Fosslas. Obviously it's resisting the ice. It's just depending on obviously the Shadow Ball's hitting. It can beat Medicham. It's iffy in the 1s, but it can beat it in the 2s. It can obviously pick up Blaziken, pick up Cast Form, Bomber Snow, Venusaur. So it picks up some. in the 2 shields. The 1 shields, it's very dependent on how many poison jabs you can get through. But I don't know. I was quite looking forward to obviously picking this, and then Golbat was chosen, and I thought that is a better poison typing. But you know, sometimes it's not fun to pick on the meta. So I feel having that poison, the acid spray debuff is quite nice. You can pick up Wiggly, you can pick up Medicham, you can pick up Articuno, Toxicroak, and stuff like that. Obviously, Toxicroak's probably not going to be used as much in this meta as if there's a top fighter, but it has its moments. And I think, like I was saying earlier, that team comp is massive. And you could run a team with Tentacruel if you picked something around it that was, you know, bulkier and had better typings. But yeah, it's got some fight in it. I think that it's just unfortunate with his movesets, and it always has been. Tentacruel has always been in every single meta just underneath what people would choose, just because, you know, running Hydro Pump as its only hard hitting move is not that great, especially obviously running it with Poison Jab. But I think it's got merit. It has got small little areas where it can pick up. It's just not massively great.
Yeah. Although I think so in the previous episode, Sir Corey was talking about how like the Ice Shard debuff from the Icy Wind debuff from an Articuno or a Dugong can turn like a really good matchup into an insanely good matchup into the next thing. And you know, sort of typically wherever Azumarill is, Tentacruel is, because it has that ability to do to resist everything Azumarill does and throw poison acid sprays at the next thing. Now Azumarill isn't here, but Charmers are always used. And possibly of all the poison types, it's difficult to wall Tentacruel with energy, isn't it? Because Hydro Pump's going to hurt everything, and things it doesn't hurt, acid spray, you get the debuff on. I've got a couple more ideas about acid spray and other things here, which I think are worth talking about. But before we sort of talk about that, because I'm keen to get your guys' opinions on that. What do you guys think, Lewis, John? Not Lewis, James. Well,
I think any move that has debuff has play, because you can flip. You know, if you get enough of them in, you might get a shield eventually. Even if you come out of that switch in, you've lost switch, but you might have a shield advantage, and they've got defense debuffed. There's a lot of mights in that sentence, but that's the kind of thing you're playing with when you're playing with a debuff like Tentacruel. But that means it has got play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be good, like, you know, if you can get locked into a Wiggly or something and farm it down, and you've got, you know, the Hydro Pump energy to throw on whatever comes in. It is situational, but, you know, and if it fits in the right team, I think it can work, because, you know, anything's got to respect the Hydro Pump because it does massive damage. I think the Golbat does a similar job but better. But again, it depends on team comp. If you want to look at running that kind of water, then it does work. You just got to get it in the right situations, I guess.
Yeah, I think when the new generation drops, Pyro's coming out, a normal fire type, which I think will have a fair bit of play. And at that point, the water typing could be a bit more valuable. And at the minute, we don't really see many water types. We see sort of Mud Boys, don't we? But we already have the counters doing the Mud Boys jobs. Pyro being sort of normal type is weak to counter anyway. We see the occasional Lapras and Poliwrath, but that's about it. Even I've not run Quillfish yet, which is like a miracle in itself. But I think depending on if Pyro takes off or if there's a huge shift somewhere, that like if all of a sudden Infernape and Blaziken become like all the rage, Tentacruel all of a sudden is the premier counter to those things.
Yeah, and I think that obviously everyone will run a Swampert because as a kind of like a good solid, and it's spammy, anything with Hydro Cannon is going to rule. But obviously with Swampert, it's going to struggle against the grasses even more with that double weakness. So at least if you get locked in with a water and a grass type, at least having that poison fast move and a poison, at least you can chip away. And if you get a debuff, you get a debuff. So you can, obviously you can't win them. And a water is going to obviously struggle, but having that poison type on a water at least stops you from losing matches so badly.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
At the very least, you get to ruin someone's day when they inevitably shield up the acid spray.
Don't. Yeah, exactly. That's always nice. If you're going to lose, at least lose with some sort of points.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of acid spray, something that I wanted to speak about, just sort of, I guess it sort of relates to Tentacruel in that a lot of Tentacruel's wins are based on poison jabbing a bit, then acid spraying, and then finishing off with poison jabs that do more damage. I wonder if something similar could be said for Scrafty. You think of Scrafty, you think counter, power up, punch, foul play, but if we're talking about G-Fisk as the only thing that you run in Scrafty for, you can beat that straight foul play anyway, and it's not like the boosted counters are going to serve you much good in the remaining matchups, because there's a lot of things here that are going to be taking on the counter users. Like things that come in next, you might get a Medicham coming in next, you might get a Shadow Vic, you might get a Venusaur or a Charmer or a Noctowl or a Golbat, at which point, yeah, your counters are boosted, but why, sort of thing. Like, what's, you're not going to be getting many off. So I wondered whether acid spray might be more interesting than power up punch. If you do need to increase the power of your counters to win a matchup, be that situationally versus G-Fisk, or maybe against something like a Frostlass to get it, for your foul plays to do more damage. Ultimately, I know it's slower than power up punch, but the net effect is the same, is that your moves will start doing more damage. It's just instead of it being on you, it's on your opponent. So if you're in the right matchup, it's got that extra longevity. It's got that impact on the battle. Those stats changes aren't lost when Scrafty gets down.
I think that's always good, is having a debuff rather than a buff, because like you were saying earlier, if something like a flyer comes in, doesn't matter if your counters are boosted at all, you're going down. But if you hit an acid spray on something, at least then for their timer that's still clicking off, that if they've swapped in, they're going to take more damage from anything that comes in.
Yeah.
It also makes them make a big decision, because they've just won switch advantage. They're debuffed, so are they going to give you switch back, or are they going to keep going with their debuffed?
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I ran it a bit in Voyager Cup. That seems like a long time ago now. That was like summer. And what I found was that Azumarill, in that cup in particular, were running Hydro Pump and Poliwrath. And I'm referencing Azumarill, even though it's not here. But just to sort of to show the extent to which the counters can start racking up with the debuffs coming two at once rather than the power up punches being one at once. If Azumarill doesn't have Ice Beam, you double shield and go straight acid spray. The Azumarill has to shield twice to win, because the counters are hurting so hard, and even a super effective acid spray after a bit will start hurting. I mean, I know you're probably not going to get numerous acid sprays against the Charmer, but something like a Venusaur, you may. Although I guess you'd go for foul play in that situation. But yeah.
But I guess as well is that a shadow grass will have to shield an acid spray, because obviously that shadow reducing health, that the fact is it will have to shield something. So even if you don't need it for the damage or the debuff, at least you can claim shields in those shadows.
Yeah, Victory Bell isn't going to know it's not a foul play, are they? Yeah. So, yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. Perhaps not something I'd suggest doing, but I mean, my issue with Scrafty, I mean, I love it. I think it's a great Pokemon, but I do find it a little bit frustrating having like no option for a sort of a fighting type charge move that does damage. Like, I know Pirate Punch is there, but it's not. You know, you might want to do 15% to a G-Fist sort of thing. It's not. And I make this, you know, I'll be there playing out the zeros sort of against the half health G-Fist, and on my head I'll be thinking about, do I go foul play for the straight damage, or do I go Pirate Punch? And I feel like I make the wrong decision quite a lot in those situations. So I also think, in a weird sort of way, removing that possibility of going for the Pirate Punch might help as well. But that speaks more to me not knowing the Sims very well than to the usefulness of Acid Spray. Yeah, I just thought it was worth touching on, given that we were talking about Tentacruel. Out of interest, clearly you're a fan of the water poisons. Given that there's a lack of water damage around here, does Quillfish not sort of take any ears up? Or?
I think it's exactly the same. If, like yourself, I really wanted to run a Tentacle, so that's why I kind of picked this to have a look at what it can do at a stretch. And I think Quillfish is exactly the same, is that if you really want to use that Pokemon, you can do. And it has similar matches as well. Obviously, you've got kind of like the Aquatail bait in there. Yeah, it's really hard. I think as a poison water type, even though you're taking less damage, or you can do damage to the grass types, it's just really hard to see a slot for them. Because you can still lose to most matches. Like I said, Tentacruel's only picking up 53%, which if you're looking at a team, you wouldn't want to look that low. But and like you said, for Scrafty, is the Acid Spray. Like, a debuff is always better than a buff if you can get it, because it lasts longer for your other Pokemon. There's nothing worse than getting a Night Slash buff when you're on 1% health. It's the worst thing to see ever. You know what I mean? But if you've got an Acid Spray debuff when you're on 1% health, that's quite nice, because at least then you're forcing, like James said, you're forcing them to either switch out to get rid of that buff and give you a better matchup, possibly, or they stay in it and you can start thinking, well, I can farm more now, maybe keep more energy for the next fight. So I don't know, there's play, but I don't think enough to sway people to pick a Tentacruel or Acid Spray Scrafty.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'm sure it's something we'll see knocking around one or two.
I'll bring it, honestly. I promise you now, I will bring on my team. If I use it, I use it. But yeah, I'll try it. I'll try it on some practices.
Fair. Nice one.
Have you tried it with Sludge Wave?
I haven't actually tried it with Sludge Wave, but looking at it, it's nice. But then you would have to, if you want to run it with Acid Spray, having Acid Spray, Poison Jab, and Sludge Wave.
Yeah, it'd have to be instead of Acid Spray, I think.
And then having Hydro Pump and Sludge Wave, you're not gonna you're gonna take the shields, but you're not gonna do any damage.
I don't think people would expect it. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think
it's a bit quicker than the Hydro Pump. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, this isn't a."
That's true.
That is true.
Hydro Pump. It's
going to be an Acid Spray.
Get the Charmers out of there straight away.
Yeah, that is true. A Sludge Wave would obviously take down Wiggly pretty hard. So.
Although, I think.
But you're going to win that match anyway.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, and the sort of selling point is the Acid Spray, isn't it? So, yeah. Yeah, right, well, unless anyone's got any other thoughts, yeah, call it a night. Nice one. Yeah. Well, thanks all for joining. Certainly some stuff to think about. Poliwrath really intrigues me in particular.
Good. Can confirm.
as you know, as I'm sure he's Golbat. But yeah, want to leave that one alone. I think myself after some rough experiences, but we'll see. Right, guys, catch you later.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, thank you.
Mate, thank you.